Hello. So in this video, we're going to talk about Cao Yu's play Sunrise, which I'm reading out of the Methuen Drama Anthology of Modern Asian Plays. So this is a 1936 play in the Huaju tradition, which is the spoken drama tradition. This is unusual in the history of Chinese theater, and much more recognizable to Western audiences. In the West, we've had a tradition of spoken drama going back at least to the ancient Greeks. The vast majority of the plays written in the West are spoken drama as opposed to opera or even musicals, whereas the Chinese theatrical tradition has a wide range of different opera styles. Different regions of China have different operatic styles, but Chinese opera is much more common throughout Chinese history than spoken drama in the sense of Western dialogue-based plays. Cao Yu helps to sort of bring spoken drama to greater popularity in China. So this play is very much about the conditions of modernity in mid-1930s China. The story follows primarily, there's a kaleidoscopic cast of characters, but our sort of central figure is Chen Bailu, who is described in the character list as a woman living at the X Hotel, 23 years old. She is a sort of socialite, courtesan, influence peddler. She is someone around whom many wealthy and powerful people congregate, in part because she's young and attractive, but she also seems to have a sort of good intuitive sense of managing people who are basically self-obsessed. So she's surrounded, for instance, by Zheng Qiaozhou, or Georgie, a foreign-educated man, 31 years old. He likes to go around using English words. He is very much convinced of his own sort of intellectual superiority and his own charm and things like this. Pan Yuting is the manager of Dafeng Bank, 54 years old. He's a sort of scheming banker who has actually mostly bankrupted Dafeng Bank, but he schemes to manipulate the stock market to raise the price of government bonds so that he can make all of the money back plus profit. So he's a shifty type character. Madame Gu is a particularly grotesque figure. She's described as a rich widow, 44 years old. She comes across as much older to me, in part because she puts so much emphasis on being young and beautiful and keeping her guy, QC, an idle gigolo, 27 years old, according to the character list, keeping him around out of the pretense that he loves her, when in fact he loves her money. So we've got all of these urban characters who reflect the obsession with money, the sort of general moral degradation, self-centeredness, all of this stuff, but they also represent sort of progress in the future. And they are essentially, the characters that we see are essentially the distorted negative elements of modernity. But alongside them are But alongside those negative elements, there are, in fact, positive elements of modernity, but these tend to be reflected in the working class characters, the poor characters, the downtrodden characters, and the rural characters. So Chen Bailu's main, I would say her main sort of counterpoint is a guy named Fang Desheng, a former friend of Chen Bailu's, 25 years old, according to the character description. He has come from the same small town that Chen came from, and he is attempting to save her from her decadent, corrupt life in the city. Initially, he comes and says that he's going to take her back home and they will get married and that will basically save her. What he doesn't seem to anticipate is her response. Because what she says is, how much money do you have? He says, I don't understand what you mean. She says, no, I mean, can you afford to keep me? Stage directions. Desheng is too surprised to reply since he has not been thinking in these terms. Now what? Don't look at me like that. You think I shouldn't speak like this? Come now, surely you must understand I want someone who can keep me. Don't you get it? I want comfort. When I go out, I'll want to go by car, and when I entertain, I'll want to wear nice things. I'll want to have a good time. I'll want to go dancing. Do you understand? Desheng coldly says, Zhuzhun, that's his. That may be her. I think that's her real name, as opposed to Chen Bailu, which is what she's going by in the city. Zhuzhun, you've forgotten who you really are. Bailu says, you ask who I am? Listen up. Background. Miss Chen from a learned family. Education, Aihu Girls School Academy, honor student, professional career, a leading light in society, executive member of various charities and arts organizations, father deceased, family poor, film actress, and cabaret dancer. What, with such a fine resume, you think I don't know who I am? Desheng, disdainfully, you seem rather proud of yourself. Bailu, and why not? I've made my own way in the world, without depending on family or friends, on my own to sink or swim, and here I am today, doing just fine, as you can see for yourself. So why shouldn't I be proud of myself? Desheng, but do you think there's any honor in making a living this way? Bailu, I feel sorry for you, Desheng. You really do live in an ivory tower. Do you think that the money of honorable people is come by honorably then? We've no shortage of such people here, as you'll see, a great variety of them. Bankers, businessmen, civil servants, the lot. If you think their professions are honorable, then the money I earn doing this is far more honorably come by than theirs. Desheng, I don't know what you mean, though perhaps our views of what is honorable. Bailu, yes, perhaps you and I differ in our opinions of honor. I never intentionally hurt anyone. I never snatch food from other people's mouths to put in my own bowl. I like money as much as they do, and I make every effort to make money. But I make my money by sacrificing my most precious possession. I don't fleece people's money. I don't extort money by trickery. I live by the generosity of others, because I've sacrificed myself. I perform the most pitiable service a woman can render a man, and I enjoy the privileges that a woman deserves to enjoy. Desheng, looking into her shining eyes. Awful, awful. Have you no shame, no scruples whatsoever? Don't you know that once your head is turned by a lust for money, the most precious thing in life, love, will fly away like a bird? So we've got Chen, who is representing this very sort of pragmatic, modernist position, right? She is reflecting this position in which one takes care of oneself, one accepts certain economic realities under a capitalist or semi-capitalist system, and notions like honor, tradition, family, piety, things like these carry a lot less weight in their traditional senses because they were quite simply designed for a different world. They were designed for the world that Fang knows out in small town rural communities. but they're not designed for life in the city. And we see, so Fang is really interested in getting Chen out of the city. Toward the end of the play, after he's sort of been there for a while and he's just been increasingly filled with disgust at all of these people in Chen's orbit, he eventually is like, so, because he again showed up and was basically like, I'm going to take you back to our hometown and I'm going to marry you. And by the end of the play, he's like, I couldn't marry you. I'm going to take you away and I'm going to find you a husband because that's what you need, but it can't be me. I can't do it. I can't marry you knowing who you are, etc., etc. But he still has this faith that if she just goes back to the countryside and gets married, she will somehow be the sort of idealized, shining, honorable person that he believed her to be. Alongside this, we've got Pipsqueak, who's a young girl, 15 or 16 years old, newly arrived in the city, who's basically been forced into prostitution. And she essentially refuses to see clients. She refuses to do the actual prostitution element of the prostitution life. And so this gangster, Black Who, regularly beats her to try and force her to comply, and she continually refuses. She escapes to Chen's apartment. Chen vows to protect her, but Black Who and the other gangsters kidnap her anyway and force her into prostitution in this very cheap, low-class brothel. And she still refuses to participate in prostitution. It's Black Sam, who's a different character. Oh, yeah. Huxi is the gigolo. Sorry. Black San is the gangster. Sorry. Anyway, so she gets put into this brothel with this older prostitute, somebody who is nearing the end of their working life. And initially, Shui Si, who's the older prostitute, it's hard to tell whether Shui Si is being kind to Pipsqueak and trying to sort of help her come to terms with this is the reality of her life now, or whether Shui Si is sort of in the service of or working alongside Black Han or Black Sun. It's hard to tell, but this bit that I'm about to read you, which I think is really, really a great indictment of the capitalist system and patriarchy, makes me think that Shui Si is trying to help Pipsqueak resign herself to this existence. So Pipsqueak says a person can only take so much. This is after being here in this brothel for like 3 days, refusing to take any clients, being beaten, etc., etc. Shui Si says, only so much, not in this line of work. I'm telling you, we're not together in this room because we're friends or sisters. Fate brought us here together. You somehow wound up sharing my room where you've been for the last 3 days. That's your fate. I'm not blowing my own trumpet now, but when I first got into this business, I was the queen of whores and saw shiny silver dollars by the thousand. But a woman past her prime is like a tarnished pearl, no longer worth much. When you get on in years, you can't take the pace and you end up in a place like this. You've got to stick it out or else go under. I'm telling you, my little Q, they've renamed Pipsqueak. We actually don't ever find out what her real name is. Pipsqueak is a nickname that Chen gives her, and that's what Chen and Fang refer to her as. But in this brothel, she's Little Q. I'm telling you, my little Q, once you end up in a place like this, forget about respectability. God knows you're smothered in men all the time. Whoever comes to you doesn't matter who he is, whether you know him or not. If he says bed, then bed must be. It's off with your trousers and let him have his way with you. How the fuck can you worry about respectability when you have to go on like that? Pipsqueak, on the verge of tears again, says, but, and QC says, but what? Men, there's not a single decent one. Every last one that comes here is after sex. They fool around, laughing and joking all the time, but when the rich guys have finished amusing themselves, once they've had their fun and gone home, we're left with our own heartaches, and in the middle of the night we think to ourselves, every one of us had a father and a mother. Every one of us was once some mother's precious baby. And which one of us won't have children of our own one day and have a family to look after? Humph. We're all human beings. None of us was born into filth, and none of us makes a living in this hellhole because we want to. And so I think we get this, again, very direct critique of the power structures of modernity, the power structures of capitalism, but also the power structures of patriarchy. And, of course, it is worth noting that patriarchy, but also the exploitation of workers, is not an exclusively modern phenomenon. And so while there is definitely that critique of modernity, the challenge to the world of the bankers, the aristocratic playboys, the courtesans, all of this stuff, the world of hard labor, of unfair treatment, of injustice, is not exclusively the world of the city. It is also the world of traditional Chinese villages, rural areas, small towns, etc., etc.